Hello and welcome to SciFi MineCart. When you're heavily invested in a genre, there are perhaps few things more exciting than discovering a classic film within that genre of which you were previously completely unaware of. The film we're going to have a look at today most certainly falls into that category. Cue title card. This Island Earth is a 1955 sci-fi film which is sort of a mixed bag, although I don't say that even in a slightly negative way. All I'm saying is that it's sort of hard to pin down exactly what genre it is. At first, it felt like your standard alien mystery movie where there are creatures on Earth that are very clearly aliens, but no one can tell that they're aliens for some reason until at the very end it's revealed that they are in fact aliens, which I suppose is supposed to be some sort of twist or great reveal. And indeed, when first watching it, I initially felt like I was just watching a higher budget and far better version of any of many other sci-fi films, such as 1967's They Came From Beyond Space. However, right before this stick gets old, the old saying that a leopard can't change its stripes is proved to be completely untrue. The two main characters are abducted by a UFO as the aliens are leaving the planet in what is possibly the most classic style alien abduction I've ever actually seen in a film, and suddenly the film transforms itself into a classic sci-fi serial style space opera. This sudden change of pace really should have felt jarring and completely out of place, but somehow they managed to actually pull it off, and instead it manages to come across exciting and rather refreshing. Following this, the film continues on as a regular space opera would, although with occasional splattering of elements that would probably qualify as sci-fi horror. Looked at objectively, the storyline is pretty much entirely unoriginal and doesn't really actually make that much sense. And in retrospect, when considering the end of the film, nothing of consequence actually happens. However, while watching the film, the fast pace and excitement of it makes none of this really matter, and the second and third act is so exciting that you forget that the first act was a bit of a drag. This Island Earth is truly quite the spectacle. It's definitely not without its flaws. For instance, some of the sound design is ear-splittingly bad, and some of the dialogue is just laughably terrible, but the film as a whole is just so darn enjoyable that not only are you more than willing to overlook these flaws, but also by the time you get to the end of the film, it's actually difficult to remember them. The three main characters in the film are nothing really special, but they are at least likable. Well, the two main characters are likable, and the third one, the alien, grows on you throughout the film. Which was refreshing to see because in 1950s sci-fi films, character development is usually rather lacking. It's also interesting to note that this third character, the alien Exeter, was actually played by Jeff Morrow, who is the same actor who played McCarthy in The Giant Bird. Which, if you've seen my recent review of, I didn't exactly laud the acting in. He does in this film a considerably better job. But to be fair, I don't think they gave him much to work with when filming The Giant Claw. But let's now move on to the main highlights of the film, which are, aside from the editing and pacing, probably what really sold this film for me. And that is none other than the phenomenal effort made by the costumes, props, sets, and graphical departments. This movie does not only look fantastic for 1955, but still manages to look fantastic today. And further, the fact that this movie predates Forbidden Planet, even if only by a year, and yet in comparison goes so thoroughly unrecognized completely blows my mind. And considering how truly alien the alien planet in this Island Earth is, and also considering how fantastic the sets are in this film, I feel that this movie definitely does not receive the recognition it deserves. Which, you know, kinda makes it prime material for SciFi MineCart. I'm definitely not one to say that good graphics is what makes a good movie great, but effectively executed graphics can definitely enhance a scene. And as someone whose love for the original Star Wars and Thunderbirds has given them a pretty big soft spot and appreciation for practical effects that utilize miniatures, every scene in which we see the alien planet under siege filled me with quite a lot of joy. The dark and gloomy atmosphere they managed to craft by combining these absolutely fantastic miniatures with an extremely ominous soundtrack made this alien location completely believable as a planet on the verge of destruction. Further complementing this effect is how masterfully they've combined these miniatures with the use of wide shots, sets, backdrops, and what appears to be some fantastically done matte paintings. From their alien abduction all the way until their return, this Island Earth manages to embody all of the best parts of sci-fi. It takes their characters, and indeed the viewer, on a journey to another planet. And while doing so, introduces them to strange technologies and alien species. No doubt, just like the elements that made up the storyline of this film, nothing that we see is likely actually original. And there are definitely things that strongly invoke earlier sci-fis, for instance their planetary transport, which looks as though it could have been recycled straight from the set of the 1939 Buck Rogers serial. However, just as they brought the storyline elements together into a new and interesting way, so too have they done with all of the elements that make up the alien planet. Now, speaking of the aliens themselves, they range from being boring and unremarkable to being rather fantastic and rather interesting depending on which species we're looking at. The main alien species is unfortunately the not very interesting one. They pretty much just look like Oompa Loompas and are overall rather unimpressive. However, in their defense, towards the end of the film, they do get pretty awesome skullcaps and uniforms that kind of resemble the ones from Forbidden Planet. And while we're on the subject of uniforms, it's probably a good time to transition into talking about the second set of aliens. The reason this transition makes sense is because what the costume department did with the second set of aliens is really rather cool. They're giant insectoid-looking thingamajigs with brains on the outside and look like they're straight out of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy or something, with an appearance of what would likely happen if the Fly and Iron Man had a baby. That's Iron Man as in Iron Man from the Phantom Creeps, not Iron Man as in the Avenger. It is this second species of aliens that lends itself to the sci-fi horror elements of the film, which I also love thoroughly because nothing beats a monster in a cheesy costume chasing people around. And with all of that said and done, we've come to pretty much the end of this review. Overall, this Island Earth is a surprisingly fantastic 1950s sci-fi film, which I'm more than a little bit surprised that I only just learned exists. It definitely has some flaws, but nothing that isn't outweighed by how thoroughly enjoyable the film is, and is overall certainly worth the watch. Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle.
You may fire when ready.
What?